What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Player Profiler News Prime Time. I'm your host, Mike Lindberg. Here with me, as always, is Coach Retzlaff. What is going on, Coach? How you doing tonight, my man?
Man, we got a lot of action to go over, plenty of impact. You know, it's the chop every single week in these fantasy football playoffs. It feels bad because you're having teams get chopped and eliminated, but at the same time, there's euphoria because of those teams that are doing well for you as you climb to the mountaintop. And of course, you're hoping to, if you're in 10 leagues, you're trying to get them all there. But law of large numbers, you're hoping you can get a handful in and then come away with multiple championships. And of course, build your bankroll for the next year. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. Things are good. And headed into week 16 right away. We got two decent games on the slate for a Monday night, or maybe not the later one, but you know what? I think there's going to be points scored in both affairs. So looking forward to seeing how, the week chops up here. And let's go over some top performers there, Jeremiah. And, there was some huge performances in the quarterback and the running back category. So let's get going on that. Let's go, buddy.
All right, top performers. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, pretty familiar, right? Josh Allen, 23 of 34, completion percentage, 362 yards, 2 touchdowns passing, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Konami code goodness, 11 carries, 68 yards. It was a 90-point total between the Lions and the Bills. This looks like it could be a Super Bowl preview. I would love to see these two teams square off in the Super Bowl. Josh Allen really putting everything on the line for his team, and he dominated early with those rushing touchdowns. And of course, he kept guiding them to victory as they had to. It was a boat race for points, and Josh Allen kept the pace. And Josh Allen in fantasy football, QB1 heading into tonight's performances, these two games that are left here in week 15, 41.28 fantasy points, and that is in 4-point fantasy setting. So you can imagine what 6 points boosted would be. Lamar Jackson is the QB3 on the week, 36.1 fantasy points, 21 of 25, 85% completion percentage for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson just throws lasers out there, just under 300 yards passing. So if you're betting for that mark, you just missed it. But 290 passing yards, you at least hit 275 if you had a bet on that. 5 touchdown passes, 6 rushes for 65 yards. Lamar has been an excellent advance rate quarterback in best ball, and he's helping those teams push from week 15 to week 16. Oddly enough, Derrick Henry got shut out from the end zone. Who came to the party? Rashad Bateman had 2 touchdowns. Justice Hill had a receiving touchdown. Shout out to Bradley Stalder, who was a high ranker on Justice Hill this week. Mark Andrews caught a tight window throw for a touchdown. Go back and watch it if you can. It's a thing of beauty. Devontae Walker, the rookie from UNC, got in on the party. Lamar is the quarterback 1 in fantasy this year. Lamar is 2nd in passing touchdowns, 7th in passing yards, 1st in fantasy points per dropback, and number 1 in rushing yards. So the MVP debate is going to rage, but Lamar and Josh Allen, phenomenal performances for both. For a dud, studs and duds, right? Kyler Murray gets just 10 fantasy points, 0 touchdowns rushing or passing, 23 of 30 for 224 passing yards, only 11 rush yards on the ground. Kyler was supposed to be a top 5 quarterback this year. Surprisingly, he is the QB10. If you've had Kyler in fantasy, you felt the seesaw effect of up and down weeks. The down weeks just seem so hurtful to your fantasy teams. It's just like a big brick. In being fair to Kyler, heading over to the running back position, the boom bust, the studs and duds, James Conner is the RB1 on the week, coming away with 30.8 fantasy points. Conner had the touchdown equity for the Cardinals, much to mine and every Trey McBride fantasy manager Connor banged in 2 touchdowns, had 110 rushing yards on 16 carries. James Conner, a perfect 5 for 5 receiving, 28 yards. So James Conner, the old veteran, is helping you advance in your fantasy playoffs and in best ball. Chase Brown, I know, Mike, he's one of your guys. 26.3 fantasy points on the week, 25 carries, 97 yards rushing. Talk about bell cow usage. A perfect 3 for 3 receiving, 16 yards and a touchdown. Chase Brown, he's becoming very topical in Dynasty as people are wondering, what is his 2025 role going to be? Brown's 2025 role becoming a topic of discussion to me is bullish for him. Even if the Bengals bring in competition, I like Chase Brown to be the new Austin Eckler, a guy who can offer versatility in the run and in the pass, be efficient on fewer touches, essentially not need bell cow usage to be a top-tier fantasy weapon. And you think the path, they didn't have high draft capital, so the path is very similar, and Chase Brown is surrounded by elite fantasy football talent. For a dud, it was between Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley for this one, but I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley, 9.4 fantasy points. Saquon Barkley helped advance 51% of Best Ball Mania teams, so this is going to cut the field quite a bit. You're just hoping other players can carry Saquon in Week 15 if you're playing this week, after Barkley carried them the rest of the entire year. So Saquon did leave for a lengthy portion of the game. I want to speak to that as well. Barkley gets to, and we'll speak to the injuries a little bit later. Barkley gets the Commanders next week in a bounce back spot. So hopefully Saquon Barkley can be healthy. Mike, what do you got on our injuries, the injury front?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a great weekend for injuries. We saw Patrick Mahomes go down. His ankle didn't look good. He's dealing with that high ankle sprain, but given his history of playing through similar injuries, there is optimism that he could suit up, but it's a Saturday game. So I'm not very optimistic about him suiting up against the Texans at home, but we're going to have to, keep a close eye on Mahomes. We know what that means for the fantasy implications with the team. I'm downgrading every single one of those skill position players on that roster, moving forward. If Mahomes is going to sit out here, they're going to want to use him there. They're still in a tight race here for that, AFC title, and they're going to want to have that bye, especially with the way the Bills are coming on, like you mentioned. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that, yes, Chase Brown is a fellow Canadian. That's right. Toronto Dave. What up, Toronto Dave?
Shout out Toronto Dave.
Yeah,
love you, man.
Yeah, but he's always a great contributor to the show. So yeah, what's up, Dave? So Bryce has got a question here. So let's pull that up here because they're our priority. Anytime we get some Q&A on here, it's important that we hit it up. So fellas, down by 28. I have Bowers and Vikings defense need a flex option here. So, Jones against the Bears defense, Addison, who's coming off a couple of monster games, and I think he's carved himself out a very prominent role, in DJ Moore also being very heavily involved in that Bears passing offense. They're creating, opportunity for him behind the line, plays off the line, using his dynamic playmaking ability. And we know the Vikings defense, they're very shy against the pass here. So I like DJ Moore as a strong play, but I'm having a hard time getting off of the situation here that you're looking at for Jordan Addison. Now you're down by 28. You got Bowers, and Darnold is off to a monster start here. I'm looking at the ceiling play here. This is the playoffs, and the ceiling play for me is Addison. They're both slightly, splitting hairs here in my rankings. DJ Moore and Addison headed into the weekend here, and they all have competition within their receiving groups. But I'm just going to go with Addison in a game where I think they're going to outscore. And you got to go with the hot hand. And if you need that ceiling play, Addison it is. But if you're looking for more of a floor play, I'd be going for more. But, it's a playoffs here, baby. Let's go for the gold here. And I'm going to go for Jordan Addison. What are your thoughts on that one there, Coach?
Hey, DJ Moore with 6 red zone targets in the last 4 games. This is his target share, DJ Moore, 7-7, 16 and 8. Go over to Jordan Addison. He has 8, 9, 6, and 12 targets. Last week, 5 red zone targets for Jordan Addison. and he has 5, 10 in the last 4 games. You are splitting hairs. I think you have to go with Jordan Addison. Caleb Williams can get streaky, and he can get streaky hot, and he can get streaky bad. In the last 4 weeks, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. Actually, I think I'm gonna speak to that a little bit later on the show sheet. But DJ Moore has been the receiver 29, 4, 7, and 35. So it's been a little bit more topsy-turvy. And then, of course, it's been up and down for Jordan Addison. But Jordan Addison, where we're splitting hairs, in those 2 games in the last month, it's been up and down as well for Jordan Addison. Wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 3 overall. Jordan Addison is on a heater. I think you just have to continue to roll with Jordan Addison. So great question, and I really hope you win.
And you know what? Those Vikings uniforms look stellar tonight, in my opinion. So yeah, like gotta go with the hot hand and the hot unis. So let's go. Okay, let's continue on to the show sheet here. And we got some injuries to continue on. AJ Brown, high ankle, left the game but came back. So I'm expecting him to suit up. I'm not too worried about that. High ankle sprains are tough for more guys like running back position. So we'll see what happens with this wide receiver. Alvin Kamara, looking like he's dealing with that groin injury, left the game, didn't come back in. I'm looking for him to not suit up this week. From what I read, looking like a 2-week absence on average. So fantasy gamers that had Alvin Kamara get them to this stage, looking for other options. And another running back, we got some fatal news today about. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I want to put people on to, in week 16, go after the Packers defense. If you have not stashed them already, they were already a good look ahead. But if you're going to have no Alvin Kamara now Kendre Miller, hey, there's upside opportunity, bell cow usage for Kendre Miller. But really pivot if you can, if you've got fab left, you need to fill that defensive spot. The Packers are a good streaming option next week versus Saints.
There you have it. I'm going to talk a lot more about the David Montgomery injury in, the next segment. So I'm going to kind of skip through that because I'll hit it up a bit more. Jaylen Waddle, MCL sprain. Looking like it's about a 2 to 3 week absence for him. So, hasn't been very, reliable anyway in your lineups. Nick Chubb, on the other hand, foot fracture. Look for Jerome Ford to continue to come back. He had that 62-yard run against the Chiefs, who are a stout run defense. So Jerome Ford is going to be the waiver wire darling this week for those fantasy gamers still in the thick of things headed into semifinal weekend. Now, Tony Pollard re-aggravated that ankle and left the game, came back, but it obviously looked like it, slowed him down a little bit. And the Titans were a little bit, easy on him after that happened. And Tajay Spears came in and looked really good in replacement of him, getting a lot of targets in the passing game. And, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that backfield moving forward because there's some juicy matchups for that team moving on. And
Spears, RB3 on the week. Crazy.
Exactly. So it's a door that you gotta, I for one had a lot of Pollard shares headed into that game, and I thought he was going to be a good one, and just that ankle injury really hurt. So slowed him down, and good for Tajay Spears, looked great. Jalen Hurts, non-throwing hand fracture, he was dealing with that all game and looked really, really strong. And I'm not worried about him next week against the Commanders, who I think is going to be a very awesome game. You talked about Saquon Barkley. He did have a high muscle strain in this one, but came back in and he's looking good to go. But, hopefully those fantasy managers that moved on had a bye, those kind of situations. A lot of Saquon owners had that luxury of getting the bye first round because he did so well during the year. So, go ahead there, Jeremiah. You had something to say?
That was just very heady, just very sharp insight on there, because in best ball, there's a chop on that. But to your point, Mike, if you've got somebody like Saquon, he's been able to get you to that bye.
Yeah, yeah. You mean, and if you didn't, hopefully the rest of your lineup got you through. Because you can't just rely on one player to kind of carry your team. And if just like every other, there were some top scorers this week. So hopefully Saquon get back on the saddle here against a Commanders team. I'm looking for a good game here. Commanders, didn't look great at the end of this last game here. So be interesting to see how they handle a really tough competition in the Eagles, who look like they're, hitting on all cylinders now. Now, George Pickens is another situation here we got to monitor. Didn't play this week. And if the Steelers look at, winning that division and gaining a home field game in the playoffs, they're going to need to win this game, I think. And they're going to need to have George Pickens because Baltimore's right on their heels here, playing good football. And, Pickens needs to be in there. They don't look the same without him. They can't get the ball downfield. They're not getting pressure. They're not getting anything outside of Pickens here. Their run game is completely halted, and the Steelers need their best playmaker back. And another situation here that happened last night in the game, and Geno Smith went down, and Drew Lock came in his absence. I haven't got an update on him yet, but something to monitor here headed into semifinal weekend is Geno Smith. You may have to look at other alternatives here, but I think they're going to try and get him in there as much as possible. The Seahawks are in the heart of a playoff race here, and that was a heartbreaker last night that they lost to. Now,
Well,
Jeremiah,
especially if you're looking at JSN, you are fingers crossed for Geno Smith. You do not want Sam Howell out there.
yeah. Okay, so the Potfather is yelling in my ear. He said 60 minutes in and we haven't played a video of him yet, so we need to get something on stage here, Jeremiah.
Hey, you're in your fantasy draft and someone says, hey, that guy's injury prone. I don't want him. And you're like, I don't know. I don't think you can predict injuries. Well, guess what? Now you can. Injury proneness is real. At Player Profiler, we have the data on these players, and it's all in the Injury Finder app. Their injury track record back through time, exactly where they were injured, how severe it is. We look at the BMI data, and we crunch it all together, and we give you probabilities that a player will miss multiple games this NFL season, as well as the complete database of NFL injuries and the ability to compare two players and look at their injury track record. The Injury Finder is powerful, and it's only $5. If it's worth it to have that peace of mind when you're drafting, go get it.
Certainly is worth that peace of mind when draft time comes around. And it was a tool that helped me this year. And you can't predict this many injuries, but they came down. And Jeremiah, let's talk about the top performers at the wide receiver and tight end positions.
Hey, and then just one more little nugget. All in package, Player Profiler, code Santa, $25. You buying yourself, hey, treat yourself, right? Like Parks and Rec, treat yourself. If you want something for Christmas, get yourself that $25 code Santa, all in package for Player Profiler. Once you get a taste, you'll want it renewed every single year. Let's get to those receivers and the tight ends.
Hold on. Can I add to that though, Jeremiah? Just like before I started working for Player Profiler, that was one of the things I did was when that deal came on, it was like kind of a tease because you kind of get an idea. But if you're reluctant to spend the whole $180 it costs to get the all-in package, this is a great way of seeing all the tools, seeing how they work, get a grasp of it, and then there's no going back. It's a no-brainer. You're gonna get the all-in package, and then you're gonna dominate your leagues week in and week out. So let's go.
Yeah, it's a great gift to yourself. Going to the Jets. Believe it or not, we have not talked about the Jets too much this year, other than some good Garrett Wilson weeks. And Breece Hall has not been as high as we want for his fantasy football outcome. Who said Devontae Adams is cooked? Devontae Adams comes away with 42.8 fantasy points. Adams was 9 for 12 receiving, 198 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. Early on, it was not looking good for Devontae Adams, but he absolutely went off in this game. There was a touchdown that was called back, and on the very next play, Aaron Rodgers went right to Devontae Adams, and just it was a thing of beauty. While Rodgers is cooked, Devontae Adams still has some future left in 2025. He showed it there today. Granted, yes, it may be the Jacksonville Jaguars, but the performance got put up. So, yes, you're playing in the NFL. and you can say, hey, it was an easy opponent. Well, guess what? Devontae Adams cooked them. Now, let's talk about another stud performance. I'm going to talk about A.J. Brown. A lot was made of the Philly drama. Is it Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith? Is there something to worry about? All week we heard about it. A.J. Brown even changed his avatar to the Grinch on social media. I had a great feeling this would turn out well for A.J. Brown this week, despite the tough matchup against the Steelers. A.J. Brown ends up with 25 fantasy points. And Mike, you had alluded to that injury. It was a pretty dirty-looking tackle against A.J. Brown. So maybe he would have stayed in the game and gotten a little bit more fantasy production. But hey, we're not going to be greedy here. 8 of 11 receiving, 110 yards, and a touchdown. I had a successful day betting A.J. Brown. He was a call I had late in the week on the Dynasty Pulse and the FF Advice Network. I hit on anytime touchdown, first quarter touchdown, anytime first touchdown, 80 and a half receiving yards, over 5.5 receptions. I had parlays, I had straight bets, I had plays for 2 and 3 touchdowns, which I laddered down the amount. So I ended up ahead as far as A.J. Brown bets were concerned. So we talk about ladder bets. Just make sure as it goes up in odds for payout, and there's a lesser likelihood, you're lessening the amount that you're betting. So that way your early bets can pay for your later bets, and you can still end up ahead if you miss a few. For a dud, I'm going to go with Jameson Williams. There was hope in a 54-point over-under game that JMO would drop at least a 20-point game. The Bills and the Lions, I said it earlier, they had 90 points total. If I were to tell you that prior to the game, you'd venture to guess that JMO would drop a 20-point game. Jameson also got his touchdown at the end of the game. A 3-reception, 37 yards, and a touchdown only yielded 12.7 fantasy points, where if you were playing JMO, you were looking for that big-time upside. People I was talking to when they were trying to slot Jameson Williams in the flex, a lot of it, hey, it's a playoff week. I really need to take down my opponent. You need a boom week. JMO did not get that for you. For tight end studs, Jonnu Smith, is he tight end 1 this week? Smith, is he tight end 4 on the season? In the last 5 games, Smith has had finishes of tight end 2, 2, 4, 7, and now tight end 1. Jonnu had 11 targets, 9 receptions. Of course, Brock Bowers does play tonight, so we will see. But hey, 2 wouldn't be so bad, right? Jonnu he hit 48 yards and a touchdown this week. Since week 9, Jonnu has had 44 yards or more. Jonnu has had 11 targets 3 times in the last 4 games. So the target volume is there for Jonnu. Now, if Jaylen Waddle is out, expect more central focus on Jonnu Smith. And Jonnu Smith has clearly proven he can handle the target volume. With no Evan Ingram, the Jaguars, Brenton Strange, I'm thinking of tonight's game, strangely ends up as a top 2 tight end heading into tonight's game. Strange had 12 targets, catching 11 passes for 73 yards, to the tune of 18.3 fantasy points. On Sleeper, ready for this? Strange is 7% rostered and only 2% start rate. So Strange really was the lottery of lotteries this week. When you think of Stone Smart for the Chargers, Chigo Okonkwo as a sleeper heading into the week, it ended up being Brenton Strange. Now for the dud. Cade Otton came away with 4.4 fantasy points, 2 catches, 24 yards, in a 40-17 rout of the Chargers. You'd expect and hope for more from Cade Otton. Otton on the season is he tight end 6, and he has been a tight end 12 or better 6 times this year. The next 2 weeks are juicy matchups. Ready? Against the Cowboys and the Panthers. So Otton is very difficult to bench at this stage of the season. The way fantasy football works, if you bench Cade Otton, he will only pop off on your bench next week. So you still have to start him, unless, of course, you have maybe a guy like Jonnu Smith. Now, Mike, what do you got for us? A little bit more. I talked about Josh Allen earlier. Can you tell us more about this Bills-Lions epic possible Super Bowl preview.
Well, I mean, it's going to be tough now. It's a tough, road ahead for these Lions, and they're banged up. They are banged up, and it's not getting easier for them now. Looking ahead, but Josh Allen, did he ever prove once again why he's the number one fantasy asset there is right now, especially in super flex leagues? The Bills signal caller racked up 362 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air, and another 70 yards on the ground, and another 2 rushing touchdowns. His all-around performance just makes him unstoppable force in fantasy football. And Khalil Shakir also emerged as a sneaky contributor. He caught a touchdown and hauled in, about 6 passes. So, a decent game for him. But Jared Goff on the other side of the ball, despite the loss, had a solid day. 350 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a nice big pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. What a game for Goff. Another big day for him. He remains one of the most consistent players out there in especially in domes, where he can be, fruitful inside. And, he's got a tough schedule ahead here. He's got an outdoor game in week 17. So that should be an interesting one. But he's been help carrying fantasy teams the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks in a row here. It's been some good stuff from Jared Goff. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown, great back into the game here. Huge day for him. 9 receptions, a touchdown, over 100 yards receiving. What a game for 14 receptions for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Another monster game for him. James Cook, a key contributor for the Bills on the ground. 2 touchdowns, broke loose there. Great game for him. And then we got to talk a little bit here about that injury. We know that David Montgomery is now out indefinitely due to a significant MCL injury. Jahmyr Gibbs is primed to take over as the Lions workhorse back, making him now a league winner down the stretch after a monster performance against the Bills, which he posted over 100 yards from scrimmage, 2 touchdowns. Gibbs showed he can thrive as the lead back, especially when given more snaps. He played 75% of the snaps in week 15, his highest mark of this season. With Montgomery now sidelined, Gibbs will likely see around 20 plus touches per game. And he is now the workhorse back. I'm not worried about Craig Reynolds or Sion Vaki coming in and spelling them too much. Gibbs is a matchup-proof star, especially with a favorable road game against the Bears coming up in Week 16. Get ready for Jahmyr Gibbs to carry fantasy teams to championships. And what a game that was for the ages. The highest scoring game of the week, and the Bills had back-to-back monster weeks. Josh Allen, 10 touchdowns in 2 games, 150 rushing yards in 2 games. Can you, just see it happening now? It's just, it's nonstop. And he's got a couple, lighter matchups here, so I could still see him coming up and being a heavy hitter, no matter who he's playing. You're on mute there, man.
Sorry, it's very interesting, the fallout from that game. The Lions are now 12-2. They have one more head-to-head matchup with the Vikings in Week 18. You have 12-2. Vikings are 11-2. Can the Vikings keep pace? And, of course, the Lions have that first edge, so it'll be interesting to see what the tiebreaker is after that. And then, for you as a Chiefs fan, Mike, what do you how are you feeling right now with the injury for Patrick Mahomes? You're 13-1. You don't have the head-to-head tiebreaker with Buffalo, and the Bills have that 11-3 record. Is it precarious? Are you nervous, or do you think the Chiefs can win at least a game with Carson Wentz? What do you think?
Well, that's why they brought Carson Wentz into the mix, is because he's got some rushing upside too, so they're going to have to scheme for that. He's going to be able to manage the clock. The Chiefs have not scored 30 points in a game, so it's not like they're even relying on their offense to do anything anyhow. I see the Texans coming in. If this was a road game for the Chiefs, I could see it being a bit harder. Even with Carson Wentz, I still see them being a favorite here. you got to go into Arrowhead. The weather's not going to be great. It is December there, and it's an outdoor facility. And CJ Stroud hasn't been playing great, and he's a guy that I'm going to be talking about a little bit more in my next segment. So that was a great, segue into it. But I mean, yeah, I'm not looking forward to seeing how these Texans are. I think every team in the AFC is chomping at the bit to go in there. They almost want to finish as the 5 seed to come in and have to go and play them because they're not exactly scaring anybody at this stage of the game. So for me and the Chiefs, they have. I think they have the Steelers still. They have Houston and
The Broncos.
and they're all tight games. And I still think Mahomes will be back for if they don't win this week with Wentz. I think that Mahomes will be back. It's just such a short week because give him the 11 days. It's a high ankle sprain. He probably could have played through it. So I think they're just going to be cautious here. They have the 1 game buffer, really, essentially. So they got a 2-game lead on the Bills, but the game in hand to the Bills. So essentially it's 1 game. And they have that buffer. So I think they're going to use it. If it was on the road, I say Mahomes is playing in this one, but it's at home against a team that hasn't been, playing good football. And the Chiefs defense has been. So I just think that this is the right spot for them to come back and win at least 1 here.
And funny enough, people will forget Carson Wentz went over to Sean McVay, had an electric 30-point fantasy game at the end of last season. So there was some flash there, something to basically, I've thought, well, hey, if you go to Sean McVay, head over to Andy Reid, you're with Patrick Mahomes. I don't think it's as bad or it will be as bad with Carson Wentz as people might think. Of course, you want Patrick Mahomes to come back. But I think it's subtle. They've got a good spot with him.
Yeah, I think like he's positioned to manage a game for them, and they're going to rely on their defense to come up, and they'll probably have to rely on their run game a little bit. You're going to see them manage the clock a bit, and had Houston been playing at a higher level, don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a cakewalk for the Chiefs, but this is a very winnable game for them, even with Carson Wentz at the helm.
I like it. Now for Bearish and Bullish.
0-1. Come on.
All right, so we've got Bearish and Bullish. I'm going to talk about Bullish. We were bullish preseason, Mike and I, like one of the last episodes before the season kicked. We were all about some Brian Thomas Jr., talking about how he is just in such a great spot in round 7 for ADP. Let's talk about Brian Thomas Jr. this week. 10 receptions, 14 targets, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 32.5 fantasy points. He is the wide receiver 4 on the week. We've always been bullish on Brian Thomas Jr., but it is worth mentioning how great of a rookie season BTJ has had. Versus that round 7 ADP in redraft and best ball, BTJ is the wide receiver 9 overall. I've had neighbors versus BTJ dilemmas of who do I start, and BTJ has been the correct answer multiple times in the recent weeks. We had the great Malik Neighbors versus Marvin Harrison Jr. debate in the offseason, and 5 to 6 rounds later was BTJ to be part of that conversation. Brian Thomas Jr. is 8th in yards after catch with 350, 12th in total touchdowns, 12th in receiving yards at 851. So he's looking like he could get the 1,000-yard mark. 5th in dominator rating at 38.4%. I want to point out BTJ is 10th in drops. To me, this is a good thing as it shows that BTJ is starting to get opportunities. I don't mind the drops if it means the targets are coming. That also goes for somebody like Malik Neighbors. Brian Thomas Jr. has had to fight not having Trevor Lawrence the last few weeks, and he had to deal with the suboptimal play calling throughout the season. Brian Thomas is such a big-bodied wide receiver. I can't help but be bullish on him, and it may be a more obvious one, but I think it has to be highlighted and commended how excellent of a rookie season Brian Thomas Jr. has been quarterback proof, and he's almost good at any time of the game for a 60-yard gain. And then all of a sudden, poof, you've got fantasy points where you're checking your score and you're like, wait, he had 3. Now he's got 9 points. Now he's got a touchdown. Now he's got 17. It can happen just like that. And it happened just like that this week for Brian Thomas Jr. and his fantasy managers. Now, Mike, who are you bearish on?
Well, I mentioned it a little bit earlier when I talk about the Texans here, and I'm bearish on CJ Stroud, and he's been one of the most disappointing quarterbacks in 2024, failing to live up to his stellar rookie season. With the Dolphins looming as a tough Week 15 opponent, Stroud's struggles were evident. He did end up throwing 2 touchdowns to Nico Collins. That was a safety blanket, but outside of that, he was not good. 3rd in pass protect pressure rate. Stroud has been pressured in under 2.5 seconds at the 3rd highest rate in the NFL, significantly impacting his ability to make accurate throws down the field. It wasn't very good when Stephon Diggs left and, got injured. It's hurt. Tank Dell still leaning off of that injury from last year, hasn't been the same wide receiver, and Nico Collins has been absent. So those managers that had CJ Stroud drafted him pretty highly this year, and he hasn't lived up to the expectations. And 9 consecutive weeks outside the top 10. Stroud has failed to finish inside the top 10 fantasy quarterbacks in 9 straight weeks. Can you believe that? That's crazy. 26th in passer rating, 2nd in off-target rate. Stroud has been the 2nd highest in off-target rate among quarterbacks since week 11, showcasing his accuracy issues and the impact of constant pressure. So his fantasy production is a serious slump with minimal hope of bouncing back until at least, probably next year at this stage. They got a couple of tough opponents this week. They got the Chiefs in a game, which I mentioned. They're going to be wanting to manage the clock here. And I just don't see a whole lot of goodness happening for CJ Stroud. They got that division locked up already. So what are they playing for too, right?
Yeah.
They're going to want to really rest some guys here, get healthy, and make a push in the playoffs. So yeah, I'm out on CJ Stroud for rest of season, and I'm glad I don't have any shares of him because he would have been detrimental to a lot of my lineups here. So
Hey, 0 shares, 0 cares, right?
exactly. Okay, Jeremiah, we're 37 minutes in. Let's get through the game primers, and you're gonna do the first one here, my man.
Hey, 2 games tonight. I'll take the Vikings and the Bears. Sam Darnold, 5 touchdown passes last week, only overshadowed by, Josh Allen. Darnold is the QB7. Sam Darnold has been the best low-cost waiver wire pickup in Superflex Dynasty leagues. Just found gold. Darnold will have a job next year. It is just a matter of where. Sam Darnold is number 2 in our explosive rating on Player Profiler. His passing EPX is ranked number 2 with a score of 123.6. That's a lot of 20-plus yard passes. Expect Darnold to have a good game tonight against the Bears secondary that isn't as tough as it was early in the season. Now, Caleb Williams is surprisingly the quarterback 14 on the season. Caleb is number 1 in deep ball attempts with 63, 8th in pass attempts with 434, 12th in red zone attempts. With DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, you're getting your money's worth on throw volume. Caleb is sneakily 6th in rushing yards with 399 and 10th in best ball points added. On Keep Trade Cut, current value for Caleb Williams in Superflex shows the following trades as even. All of these are 1-for-1. Superflex, Caleb for Devon Achane, Caleb for Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb for Drake May, Caleb for BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., and Caleb for an early 2025 first. My impression is that these are prices you could not get between rookie drafts and to about the first few weeks of this NFL season. Now, if you said no to those, you wanted the other players, that just shows you, instead of Caleb, that just shows you how much the market has changed. Now for the receivers, both sides are electric. Jordan Addison, 3 touchdowns last week. Justin Jefferson had 2. Addison has been on fire. 2 of the last 3 weeks I had mentioned, Addison has been wide receiver 1 overall, wide receiver 3. Addison is 8th in quarterback rating per target. So you can see why Sam Darnold likes throwing to Jordan Addison. In the last 4 games, Addison's targets 8, 9, 6, and 12, 10 red zone targets. You're firing up Jordan Addison and have to live with his down weeks. Chev and I on the Dynasty Pulse, we have been going back and forth on A.J. Brown and Jordan Addison. You got to love, I was high on A.J. Brown. How can you not love Jordan Addison? So shout out to you, Chev. Justin Jefferson is the number 1 in explosive rating with a score of 130. So his teammate Darnold has a lot of big plays. Justin Jefferson, it makes sense. Jefferson's LSU teammate Jamar Chase is the wide receiver 1. Jay Jets is wide receiver 2. Jefferson is 2nd in receiving yards, 6th in receptions, 6th in total touchdowns with 7, 6th in fantasy points per game with 18.1, number 2 in yards per team pass attempt with 3.01. Justin Jefferson is worth every penny, and there was so much concern with Sam Darnold. We look up, and Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver 2. So my Bullish segment a week ago was about the Bears wideouts. DJ Moore has been feast or famine the last 4 games. He's had finishes as wide receiver 4, 7, then wide receiver 29, 35. Sitting at wide receiver 14, a few good games to end the season will get DJ Moore with a wide receiver 1 finish. Keenan Allen may not have a huge future in dynasty leagues, but he's had a boost since OC Shane Waldron, head coach Matt Eberflus were fired. Like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen has had finishes as the wide receiver 4 and 5, and then the wide receiver 49 and 53 across the last 4 games. And 36 targets in the last 4 games for Keenan Allen. That's 9 targets a game. Keenan Allen has always been a PPR magnet, and it's continued here in Chicago. Rome Odunze, he's a player I want in best ball, in redraft, and anywhere I can snag him in Dynasty in 2025. I'm pushing chips in on him. Rome Odunze had a 2-touchdown performance against the 49ers in Week 14. Until Keenan Allen gets out of the way, we won't see that full Odunze upside, but it is coming. Remember, we just needed Tyler Lockett to move out of the way, and JSN has been phenomenal. So JSN has matriculated up on his own, so we may just see the talent rise for Odunze, regardless of DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. For tight end, TJ Hawkinson, 11 targets in the last 2 games, 4 red zone targets. I like TJ Hawkinson's chances of landing in the end zone tonight. I've got a bet out there for him. Just a simple straight bet for a touchdown. Cole Kmet, 6 out of 7 games. He has had 7.2 fantasy points or fewer. That's 6 out of 7 games. You're hoping for a touchdown if you have Kmet in your lineups. Otherwise, he's a stay away. DeAndre Swift is 5th in yards per reception with 9.3, 13th in carries with 193, and 9th in receiving yards with 315. No Roshan Johnson tonight as he is out with a concussion. Then Aaron Jones in his age 30th season has shown explosivity. Jones has the most plays this season at running back, explosive plays with 24. You're hoping for a high RB2 performance at best for Aaron Jones, but it's a nice matchup indoors, and the Bears defense has not nearly been as scary as they were earlier in the year. Mike, what do you got for our other game with the Raiders and the Falcons?
Oh, let's take a look at what's cooking up on the chef's table. So the Monday Night Football round 2 promised to be, a somewhat intriguing contest, but in fantasy football anyway, there's some skill players that I'm looking at. Both teams have been underwhelming this season, but individual performances like Kirk Cousins, Desmond Ridder, Bijan Robinson, and other pivotal players we're going to have to keep an eye out here for. Kirk Cousins been struggling the recent weeks. He's trying to find himself really in this situation. The Raiders rank 27th in pressure rate, and they're without Max Crosby. So, he might have time tonight to make some plays. His percentage at 72%, 8 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns. So we're looking at Cousins. If there is a situation, tonight is the night for him to kind of get back on track. But if he struggles, I could see them pulling him right away and maybe getting a rise out of some Michael Penix action. We never know. So we'll see what happens there. Desmond Ridder, on the other hand, has been wildly inconsistent his whole career, and the Raiders, they're in a situation where everything is up in the air. So I'm not looking forward to this situation whatsoever. Brock Bowers maybe suffers here a little bit. Jacoby Myers, he seems to be a little bit quarterback proof at this stage of his career. He's hasn't been able to be super prolific in the touchdown department, but he's getting the targets, and hopefully that continues tonight. The running back position is where the Falcons potentially will dominate tonight, and that's Bijan Robinson. His recent hot streak is great. He's coming off a 100-yard, 1 touchdown game against a tough Minnesota defense, and marking his 7th top 10 scoring week in his last 8 games. Over that span, he ranks 2nd in the league in success rate and 4th in expected points added per rush. The Raiders have struggled to stop the run, allowing 4.5 yards per carry, 19th in the league, and they give up 172 yards and 2 touchdowns to the combination of the Bucs backfield. So this could be a smash situation for Bijan Robinson and the Falcons as they look to control the clock and try and just get an easy win tonight. So hopefully for fantasy gamers, there is a little bit more fireworks than that. Sincere McCormick on the other side of the ball has been a pleasant surprise for the Raiders, seeing increased usage in recent weeks. McCormick handled 90% of the backfield touches against Tampa. He produced 89 yards on those touches. Since his activation, he has outperformed starters, and looking to really gain off of that. He's kind of like been whispering as, a guy that you could put in as your flex and be a potential league winner down the stretch here. So Drake London, cooling off in recent weeks, still remains a top target in the Falcons passing game, but the Raiders, they allow 8.4 yards per target to slot receivers and have been especially vulnerable to outside wideouts as well. So allowing 7 yards per target to those wide receivers. London has been targeted on 34% of its routes against man coverage, and the Raiders playing more man defense recently should be a chance for a breakout, but you got to think that they are looking to control the clock in this one. So I'm not expecting a huge game for these Falcons wide receivers unless the Raiders can put up some points. Had Aiden O'Connell been coming off of what he's been, gaining some momentum there, I would have been a little bit more optimistic. But Desmond Ridder brings a slower pace game, more of a running, first style. So this could be a very slow pace game, which unfortunately for fantasy managers might not put them over the edge here in what they need here to get to the next level. But we've got a couple tight ends here in this game that, both have been, pegged as the most elite of their time, but Brock Bowers is the one that looks like the part here, and what a rookie season he has. And Kyle Pitts has looked completely almost, invisible at this stage of his career. And I'm not looking forward to this at all. I mean, I was listening to a podcast this afternoon and they were saying, was Kyle Pitts hindering the breakout that Jonnu Smith would have had last year in Atlanta? And yeah, man, Jonnu Smith is looking very good. He's so athletic, and he's the best pass catcher in the Miami Dolphins offense playing right now. Tyreek Hill has lost a step. Jaylen Waddle injured out. Achan is their backfield guy and has been, a target machine, but Jonnu Smith has just been on a 5-game tear. And, you're a lot of managers in the championship could be riding, he could be on a lot of championship rosters if he continues his streak, right, Jeremiah?
Oh man, it's funny you say that about Jonnu Smith with the Kyle Pitts example. I believe we have the same brain, Mike. I think that was Sigmund Bloom and the Football Guys where they dropped that. So excellent nugget there. I like what you bring up with Bowers and Kyle Pitts, because in this matchup, you can see the divergence of Brock Bowers, what he is doing, what Kyle Pitts has not been doing. In both coming out of college were lauded as just, GOAT material for their position, just to be the number one from the jump. All the hype was there for Kyle Pitts. I get the impression with Kyle Pitts that the work isn't really being put in as he's moved up to the NFL. He's not entirely locked in. The players, the coaches, they see all these players. When we think about, well, how come this player isn't getting opportunity? Well, with Kyle Pitts in this situation, I think part of it has to do with the fact that maybe he's not putting in all the work, or he's not doing everything that he should be to be locked in. And then Brock Bowers comes along and he hits, and I get the impression he's probably putting in all the work that he has to. So it's very interesting how you go back over time, guys we hit, guys we miss. It can come down to what you and I don't see and what happens every day.
Yeah, man. Great show there, Jeremiah. Just a reminder to those out there that we got a special on the all-in package for Player Profile. So go on there. Got a great rate right now, and get on it now while the discount's hot, because it's a great tool that you could use rest of season and then into, the 2025 season before it rolls over. It just, browse the tools, get what we have the opportunity to see every day, and the tools that have allowed us to get to this stage of our careers here. And appreciate everybody from tuning in. Jeremiah, send us off like you do every week.
Hey, you want this, you want to push through. You got 2 more games. You're going to feel the chop into next week. It happens to everybody, but really celebrate those teams that are advancing on. Savor it your whole week, whether you're prepping, whether you're listening to your podcast, you're reading up, you're doing your research, right? You're in the lab. Keep that up, because in 2 weeks, that is about to go away in a different way. We go into off-season mode where we do our dynasty startups, our best ball drafts, just a different shift method, mode, and mindset. We're always 365 in this game, but for the reps of, Justin Jefferson has scored as a touchdown. Very nice. These reps are about to go away for a long time until next NFL season. So savor it up, and we will see you next week.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.